Are career professionals helping people choose the right or wrong career?
Yes, indeed. That is the question that we are going to be looking to answer today with our guest, Sophie O'Brien from Pollen Careers. Welcome back to the We Are Careers show with Chris and Sabiha. Now, Sabiha, this question is perhaps maybe a slightly triggering one for some career development professionals. How are you feeling about us tackling this topic today?
Well, I think it's the exact reason why we should be tackling this reason, to get us outside of our comfort zone and also to sort of push us to make sure that the services that we do provide as career professionals are aligned and relevant in the modern age of career guidance. So I don't know about anybody else. Viewers, are you excited? Have you got an opinion on this? If you have, depending upon what platform you're joining us on, please make sure that you engage. And for those viewers who are joining us for the very first time, thank you so much for joining us. Hit that subscribe button. This will make sure that you don't miss a single one of our future episodes. But also as well, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice that there is a backlog, a significant backlog of a whole range of topics that we have covered previously as well. Now, I want to give a really warm welcome. And viewers, if you resonate with what Sophie has to say today, make sure you show some love in the comment section on the platform that you're joining us on. Sophie, a very warm welcome to the show. Now, there will be viewers here today who may not have come across the work that you do. So let's start there. What got you into the work that you're currently doing right now, and why are you doing the work that you're doing?
Hi, thanks for having me, guys. So I run a careers platform called Pollen Careers. We are a community for entry-level job seekers. We have lots of resources. We do lots of initiatives that help people boost confidence, gain exposure, figure out their right path. And we also connect them with our network of employers based on alternative hiring methodologies. So what got me into what I do now? So I actually don't have any career history myself of being a careers professional. I have worked in the education sector before, but the majority of my career was actually spent in the media and advertising industry. A lot of my role in my last company, where I was for 7 years, was hiring a lot of people into entry-level and junior positions. We were a small company, but we were growing. And our hiring ethos was always get great people in early on in their careers, train them up, develop them. Recruitment is extremely challenging, especially at more senior levels. So our plan was just to be a great place to work that appealed to young people, and operate as a business that gave them a brilliant platform for the rest of their career. So I did a lot of that, and then I was in a position where I was actually looking for a job myself, which was quite frankly soul destroying. And I came to the conclusion that actually maybe employment wasn't for me anymore, and I wanted to do something where I could address the challenges that young people face when they're trying to find their right path, and create a safe space, a community, and an alternative way of looking for fulfilling employment outside of the normal arduous processes of updating your CV, applying to jobs on jobs boards, and actually making that whole experience way more effective and way more positive for both sides.
Yeah, and I think that leads in really nicely, Sophie, to, I guess, the first question that we've got, the question that we asked at the top of the show, which I guess is sort of deliberately a little bit controversial, this idea of, our career professionals helping people select the right careers or the wrong ones. Lots of career development professionals, I think, would probably kind of challenge that generally, the idea of there being a right or wrong career. But I guess what we're kind of talking about here is the norm and what that kind of norm looks like. And I guess, as you were saying, sort of perhaps trying to kind of challenge that a little bit. So, yeah, tell us, I guess, what's your answer to that question in terms of, are careers professionals helping people to pick the right or the wrong careers in your view, based on your experience?
So I guess I've been pondering this question, and I think fundamentally we need to get out of a mindset of there being a right and wrong. I think that there's so much pressure already put on young people. We're so fixated on outcomes and whether that outcome is a right outcome or a wrong outcome, whereas actually what we need to move more into is a mindset of everything is a process, everything is a journey. And if we remain fixated on outcomes, then nobody's going to be fulfilled at the end of it. And I can tell you now, I started my career nearly 20 years ago, and lots of people in my generation were applying to corporate grad schemes, climbing the ladder, and that was the advice that was given. Get a grad scheme, and then your career will skyrocket. That never happened for me. I tried because that's what was told to me to do, but I didn't do anything vocational, so it was never clear what that thing was. And now my peer group are arguably experiencing a mental health crisis because they've done everything that our society expected of them. They climbed the corporate ladder. They did everything our education system told them to do, and they're not fulfilled. And they're like, right, well, I've got to the top. What happens next? Where do I go from here? Do I just keep trying to make more money? I don't get a kick out of that. And it's really difficult, right? Because even if they've been really successful, they're now questioning what success even is. And I don't believe that the careers model in that time has materially changed. But what I'm seeing is young people are questioning what success looks like. Actually, some of the young people that I meet every day are emotionally mature, are privy to the fact that actually then that financial future is not looking great. They therefore are considering what a career means for them in terms of a sense of purpose, in terms of a belonging, in terms of adding value to the world, because what they're faced with every day is negative rhetoric, is actually problems getting worse, like societal, environmental problems becoming increasingly worse, not better, and actually mindful of the fact that they're going to be the generation that has to fix these things. So I think financial reward and having a carrot dangled at every step, it is not really going to be effective for that generation. Add to the fact that they've probably got family members going through mental health crises, and they're the ones that are picking up all of the remains of that. So for me, this is a really interesting transition in the world of work. Like, it's never moved so fast as it's moving now. And this is an opportunity for us to take a step back, redress what, is right and wrong even the right turn of phrase here? Do we need to rethink what a career looks like vocation? Because industries could collapse tomorrow and people need to retrain. Actually, there's going to have to be a migration to a totally different non-vocational career where actually you're going to get it wrong. You're going to have to get it wrong because you don't know. Like, you could start one industry, you could become a graphic designer. Next thing you know, there's a better AI solution for graphic design, and your career's over. You can't predict that. So there's no point in reframing as right or wrong.
Yeah, and I think a lot of career development professionals would absolutely agree with you. I think, this idea, as you say, that of career being kind of a linear process or something kind of solely attached to one industry or one vocation. I think a lot of career development professionals would say or feel heartened to kind of move away from that model. But it's interesting, a number of the things that you've been talking about, I think we're probably from kind of a similar sort of generation, and I've certainly seen very, very similar things with my peer group, getting to kind of a particular age, having had, as you said, maybe 15 to 20 years in the workforce, having followed a model that was kind of prescribed to them and told, if you do this, things are going to work out pretty well for you. And in certain ways they might have done. But of course, as you said, in other ways, people are now looking, going, well, I know I'm going to be retiring later. I know I'm not going to have a sizable, maybe a kind of pension, if that's even an option for me. And actually, the world around me looks like it's getting worse and work looks a lot more uncertain. So where do I go from here? So I think these, as you say, these kind of mini crises affecting one generation, younger generations perhaps looking at that and, as you say, maybe kind of questioning the dominant model that exists. But I guess from kind of your perspective, with all this stuff that's kind of happening, and as you say, that model maybe materially not having moved on, where do you think we perhaps kind of have to target changing it? Because I guess we talked at the beginning of the program about careers professionals, but really we're talking about something a bit more systemic here, aren't we? In the sense of it comes from education system through to actually our system of work and everything in between, the media, how we talk about jobs, how we talk about career. So, is it really kind of a more holistic thing, I suppose, that we need to change?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that we're still fixated on this phrase, what do you want to do? And when I do any mentoring or one-to-one career support for members of our community, I still get asked it all the time. How did you know what you want to do? And I say, I still don't know what I want to do. It's not a thing. Nobody knows the answer to this question. Everything is a journey. I had one career. I've had multiple different careers. And I think what we need to normalize is career changes, that it's okay to do one thing and then go into something else. And by normalize, I mean, not just for young people and students, but also for employers as well. There's a whole mindset shift that needs to happen there, and actually championing people that have transferable skills and different experiences. Actually, that adds value to your business rather than takes away from it. And I also think that we need to champion skills that are not necessarily technical skills. Again, I think because we're so focused on what do you want to do, therefore your education journey follows a path to achieve that outcome of that golden career. But that industry might not exist in a few years' time. It might be incredibly competitive to get into that industry, or you might be actually, like, from a personal strengths perspective, you don't really know at a really young age what you're really good at. Yeah, I'm still learning what I'm really good at. And you might become so fixated on that one thing and then realize that that's like, you might not be that good at it, but that's okay. We just need to take the pressure off a little bit, normalize squiggly careers, generalist skills, and actually encourage people to focus on their personal strengths and their soft skills. That actually is like the number one critical thing that most employers are looking for. And that's always been the case.
So many interesting points there, Sophie, that you're talking about. And, on so many levels, I'm resonating as somebody who hires for companies. I resonate with somebody individually as a, career practitioner. I resonate as somebody who is a sibling, an auntie who recently has had to give career guidance, right, to my nephews and nieces. So many layers to this. And there's so many different ways. So I'm loving how you're unpicking that, was even the question that we asked at the beginning of the show actually the right question to ask? And is it too limited to actually what we're trying to do in terms of in industry, but also for individuals as well? And where can we find that middle ground where industry and human beings can meet without guilting and shaming one another for having chosen them and making the choices that we have made? I mean, I know for me personally, for anybody, I'm of Asian heritage. So there were certain careers that were, there was 5 career choices that you had, and it was limited to that. And if you didn't become one of these career choices, then literally it was, oh, you're not going to be successful. And that was the end of that conversation. And, you're battling against that. So one of the things, Sophie, I know that you have been quite passionate about and that you've worked on, you've actually created what you refer to as the meaningful work framework. So can you tell us a little bit more about this? What inspired you, number one, to create it? And how can it be used? And I suspect that this is a tool that can be used not just with students, however, any person who is looking to understand and build a meaningful career.
Yeah, absolutely. So it came about exactly from those conversations I was talking about. People always asking me, like, how did you know what you want to do, or how can I figure out what I want to do? And actually, the conversation that I try and move people towards is less fixating about what you want to do, but thinking about a number of other factors that feed into fulfillment in the workplace. And I think when we're talking about words like meaningful, purposeful, things like that, I think that there's an assumption of, oh, I'm going to go work in charity, or I'm going to go and work for a social enterprise or something like that. But actually that's not what this means. What this means is how you as an individual can find belonging in a workplace. And actually, it's rarely about the job that you do. What you do as the day-to-day is rarely the deciding factor as to whether you belong and whether you're fulfilled and whether you're excited to go to work. And the nucleus of this framework actually comes down to people. It's the team that you work with, and it's leadership within that team as well. And why people is such a critical part of this is because people don't quit jobs, they leave bad bosses. That's the fundamental reason why people aren't happy at work, is because of the people around them. So actually, when I'm guiding people on how to inform what their job search looks like, it's like, let's remove the what you do. Let's focus on other factors that are going to influence the success and compatibility of you and that role. So you've got people and leadership at the heart of it. And then you've got 4 other more fluid factors that dictate whether you are satisfied in the workplace. And there's probably the affordability to scale these up and down. You as an individual have different preferences as to what really matters to you. So these 4 factors are compensation, is how much you get paid. It's growth and learning potential. It's what there is an element might be what you do that plays into it, but also working style, how you work. And for different people, these things have a different level of importance. So for me, for example, I'm at a stage in my career where actually compensation is not my priority, but for other people it might be. And likewise, growth. I think that there's an expectation that everybody should be ambitious and everybody should be striving for the next thing, but the reality is people feel differently about that. Some people might have passions and hobbies that they have outside of the workplace that actually fill their bucket and give them fulfillment in life. So some people might be like, I just want to go and do my job. Like, yes, I want to push myself a bit, but I'm not trying to be super ambitious here, and that's okay. And then you've got the work content, which is what you actually do for a job. Obviously, if you're doing the same thing over and over again, then you've got to have an enjoyment for it. But I think that we're so fixated on what that job actually is, and we need to take a little bit of a back step and say, well, who am I as a person? Do I love doing lots of tasks? Like, does that fill my bucket? Do I want to just be sat by myself churning out tasks every day? Or do I value relationships? Is it more important for me to get to speak to people? And there's other things that we can think about in terms of what you do that contribute to you being fulfilled at work. And then work style. It's about, for some people, flexibility is so important. They might have family responsibilities at home. Flexibility might be fundamental to being able to live their lives how they want. So, but for some people, it's like, yeah, like, I'm happy to be in the office 5 days a week. Like, I'm happy to work long hours. That doesn't bother me. So I think we just need to take a little bit of a step back and think about these things. And then when I'm having these conversations and then trying to disentangle with people what really matters to them, actually it uncovers maybe deep-rooted passions or personal motivators that maybe people didn't realize they had. For example, for me, I'm really passionate about female leadership. If I was going to go and get a job, I would want to work for a woman. And therefore, when I'm thinking about what companies I would be applying for, I'm probably going to go and scour some awards lists or something of companies that have their female leaders have won awards, or they're well recognized for their female leadership, or be proactively looking for companies that invest in their female leaders. Maybe they publish their gender pay gaps. Maybe they have connections with organizations that are really empowering women in the workplace. And those, for me, are signals that actually that's going to fill that bucket. That's going to help me. So, and actually,
yeah, I really like
in that organization, but those are strong indicators that's where I could belong.
Sophie, and I really like how you've created this framework to allow people to understand, as you said, the driving forces behind the choices and the decisions that they are making, and perhaps even sort of almost challenging any sort of established thoughts on a subject matter and a topic and a bucket. Because where did that come from? Because sometimes you think, oh, well, that's just how I've always thought. But why do you think that way? Why do you feel that way about something? And sometimes we do need to be sort of pushed outside our sort of kind of way of doing things in order to say, okay, is this still something that I firmly believe in? So I really like that your framework that you've developed encourages people to do that. So Sophie, any practitioner who's listening here today, and maybe this is a new practitioner, career professional that's maybe starting their career in this space, or maybe it's an established career professional like Chris and myself, where we've got a decade's worth of experience under our belt, and maybe we're looking for a new way to have energizing conversations. Why should career professionals, look to integrating your framework? What value, what benefit would they be able to produce for their clients that they're serving?
You know what? I think one of the fundamental reasons why it works is that it also benefits employers. If I think about, I've interviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of candidates over the years. And I'm so often asked that, for me on a personal level, when I'm hiring, the most fundamental part of that interview is the questions that I am asked. And the ones that often fall down are the individuals that are asking just generic questions, clear that they could have just come from Google, and they're not meaningful questions. Like, what are the day-to-day responsibilities of the job? Like, you can't differentiate candidates with kind of generic questions like those. And therefore, when you're a careers advisor, you need to be mindful that actually it's not one size fits all when a job applicant is applying for jobs. Actually thinking about these factors from the framework are really beneficial for a job seeker, because by the time they've reached the employer, that employer is better able to establish an emotional connection. If that candidate is showing up and saying and answering questions like, why did you apply? Well, actually, I'm really passionate about female leadership. Then for me as an interviewer, of course, that's something that I'm passionate. I'm a female leader. Of course, I'm passionate about that. I'm going to feel a much deeper level of resonance with that individual and think that they're going to be invested in my company. And whatever of those other factors could be, is like, this is something that really matters to me. I've thought about this. I understand what I care about going into the world of work. And once they've met that interviewer where it's a fit, where they've thought about it, they've applied on the basis that this company has the signals that they're looking for, and talking about that company's values, their mission or their culture, anything. This is more often than not what companies want to hear. They want to hear that you've gone on their website, that you've done your research, and that you're invested, not like that you know how to use Microsoft PowerPoint or send an email, because quite honestly, that if they know that you care and that you're going to come in with energy and enthusiasm and a can-do mindset, because actually you're a good fit from a cultural perspective, they won't care if you can or you can't do that. They're going to love it here, and they're going to learn a lot, and they're going to be invested in their own development, and they're going to be invested in this company. So actually the bigger message to careers practitioners is, if you adopt this type of framework, actually you're going to get greater success, because that candidate is probably going to show up in a better way at the point that they are applying for jobs.
Yeah, we so often stress the importance of that kind of motivation question at the start of an interview, because as you say, it can be such an amazing launching off point if you do it well, and it can be, on the kind of flip side of that, something that can kind of torpedo sometimes a relationship with an interviewer very quickly if it's very generic, or it just feels like there's no real thought or attention that's gone into it. One of our colleagues in the careers sector, Anthony Adams, talks a lot about this in terms of empathy, that the fact that actually we often ask employers to show empathy towards candidates and job seekers, which I think is fair. But actually, how often do job seekers show empathy towards the employer, as you've just been talking about, thinking, what is it actually that this person on the other side of the desk or at a table or wherever it might be is thinking, is feeling? They have a lot invested, whether they're a hiring manager or whether it's their business, they've got a lot invested into this. What do they need to hear in order to kind of feel confident that, that you might be the right person for them? So a really important point about that idea of, that fit or culture, and actually how you can kind of go about doing that. Now we're very rapidly coming towards the end of the podcast, Sophie. We could talk about this all day. And in fact, you've given me some ideas there for some future episodes we can kind of come back to. But I guess if we've got sort of careers practitioners who've been watching or listening to the podcast today, and, they're thinking about, okay, you've given them some inspiration about sort of maybe kind of connecting with clients, thinking about how can I have perhaps more meaningful career conversations? How can I, try different approaches, all those sorts of things. What would you say maybe are your kind of top 3 tips for having those conversations about meaningful, purposeful careers based on your framework, or based just more generally around your experience?
So I guess they're not really, they're sort of tips, but they're also what I see as emerging trends that we all need to be mindful of. So firstly is a rise in demand for more generalist roles, what I see, I'm obviously very networked in the startup community. Most of the employers that we work with are smaller businesses, which I'll come on to in the next point. But actually, you don't know as a business really what role could be made redundant with the rise of AI and technology in the next few years. What you're really looking for as an organization is a team of people that can adapt, that can embrace the unknown, and can try their hand at all different roles. So what I very much see is this rise of squiggly careers, generalist skills, and actually encouraging young people to embrace that is only going to be a positive thing. The second thing that I often see young people get trapped in a vicious cycle of is applying for jobs in large companies. So often, young people only know about the jobs that exist. And the reason they know they exist is perhaps because that company has had a stand at their careers event, or because it's a well-known brand that they've heard of. Like they're thinking, oh, maybe I could work in the food and drink category. I'll apply for Coca-Cola. But actually, large companies make up the minority of employment. And speaking on behalf of a small business owner, I both in this job that I now have and in a previous life when I was doing a lot of recruitment in a small business, it's really, really hard to hire, really hard. Which as a job seeker, you're probably thinking that's crazy, but small companies, they don't have the budgets to go and sponsor your uni or college careers fair. They don't know. And honestly, if they're only applying for a handful of roles, why would they? It makes no commercial sense. So don't be afraid. I always encourage young people, don't be afraid to go and dig out those small companies. And I think if careers practitioners could do more to showcase smaller companies, actually you can be fixing a problem on both sides. And then the third point is what we touched upon earlier, which is really migrating from a standpoint of what do you want to do, to maybe who do you want to be? What is that individual's strengths? What inspires them? What motivates them? What gives them energy such that when they're at the point of applying to jobs, they're showing up with all of the soft skills that employer wants them to showcase.
Oh, I think number 3 might be seems a bit then, but I agree, Sophie. I think these are some of the conversations that need to be had. And as Chris said, we are now at the end. I mean, there's so many other questions now that I want to ask you, but we are out of time. So here's what I want to do, Sophie, because I suspect that this conversation will continue offline beyond the podcast. So I want to firstly start off by saying a massive thank you to Sophie for joining us on the podcast. Now, if there are viewers and listeners who want to connect with you about this topic or even get their hands on the framework, where is the best place for them to go? And do you have any particular resources that you want to signpost them to?
So if you want to check out more about what we do, you can visit the website. It's pollencareers.co.uk. If you want to speak to me, if you want to see my framework, happy to share it. Just drop me an email on sophie@pollencareers.co.uk.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sophie. We will make sure, as always, that we include everything you've mentioned there. So the Pollen website, your email, and I believe LinkedIn as well. I think you're
yes.
Yes,
Sophie O'Brien on LinkedIn as well. So feel free to connect with me on there.
Perfect. Well, what we'll do, as always, for anyone watching or listening, is we'll make sure that all of these kind of links are put into the YouTube description or episode notes on Spotify. So check them out in there if you've been interested by anything that Sophie's been saying today, or you want to kind of connect with them moving forward. But as Sabiha said, that is pretty much it for today's episode. Wraps things up very nicely. A massive thank you again to Sophie for joining us on the show today. Big thank you to all of you watching or listening, wherever you may be. And we'll see you in the career sphere in a fortnight's time for our next episode. See you then.
Thanks, guys.